In this episode, I'm joined by Clay Davidson. We recorded this one day after he had competed at ADCC tournament in Vancouver. He won bronze in his division and shares some of the glory moments from those fights in this episode. This episode was a ton of fun to record, lots of laughter. Clay has a background in hockey. He started mixed martial arts when he was 29, fell in love with it immediately, and has been getting after it ever since. He's competed, he's had over 20 pro fights, and at 45, he's still wanting to compete, has another competition in his sights coming up in September. And this was so much fun to record. Enjoy this episode, guys. You're in for a treat. Clay, thank you for joining me on the Warriors Raised podcast. It's an honor to have you here today. And welcome to our listeners.
Thank you.
And Clay just competed yesterday, so it's like fresh off the mats. I'd love to know what's been your highlight of your day so far today.
I just, I think I'm really grateful for just being able to compete yesterday, especially at my age. I'm 45, and I don't go in the Masters group. I go with the young guys, so I'm going with guys half my age. So, and actually, when we walked into the arena, we seen there was a bunch of people playing basketball, but they're all in wheelchairs. They had no legs. And right away, I was so stressed out about my day. And I was looking at all those people, and they have to live every day without legs. So it kind of put my thing in perspective. So I think today I'm just thinking that I'm really grateful for the experience that I had yesterday. To get out there and compete against some of the top guys around it, and leave it all on the map.
I love that. That's amazing. What a gift to just like even get to see that while you're in your own like thinking about fighting, and then you're like, hey, at least I have legs.
yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And they're smiling, and that's like, whoa.
How did your fights go yesterday?
It was good. I lost my first match, which was very upsetting, but I bounced back, and I think I got like 3 or 4 wins in a row, and then got knocked out and I got a bronze in my division. So I was happy with that. And like I said, I go with way younger guys, so I thought that was a big achievement. And then I lost in the open against a really good wrestler, but just on points. So I didn't really feel like, to me, that's not a loss. And I got a really good a choke on a guillotine choke, which that's kind of my specialty, on an Olympic wrestler in the open, who he was a massive guy. He probably had like 100 pounds on me. So it was pretty exciting. My mom just recently passed away, probably about 2 weeks ago. And after I tapped that guy, I thought of my mom right away.
Oh.
Right away. Yeah.
I love that. I would love to just make the invitation to dedicate this podcast to your mom. I really appreciate coming on here so fresh, and my condolences to your loss. Yeah. Was this guy, so you ran into a guy that we trained with, Gord, in Vancouver?
Yes, yeah. It was so great to see him. It's so nice to see those familiar faces. And he was like, I had such a great little visit with him, and he's a great guy. He's a very likable guy, and it's awesome that jiu-jitsu attracts all shapes and sizes. He got into it way older, so it's like, it's cool, the sport that can do that.
Totally. Well, and he's a savage. He's a Well, he sent us a photo to our team group chat of you guys, and then another photo of him with somebody who was really, really tall and big. And I'm wondering, because we were like, who is this massive guy?
Yeah, that's Big Dave. He was, and he just smothers everyone. He just mounts them and he smothers them. He's one of the best in the world. So he was there, and he won the Open. So.
And you got to compete against him?
No, I didn't. I missed him. If I got one more win, I think I would have met up with him. But he was right by my match, and we were watching each other compete. It was cool. He complimented me on my guillotine. So
Nice. Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
you showing us some guillotine
yeah,
tricks when you were here, and
yes.
I've definitely I've been like seeking them more since the yeah. I'm like, wow, these are everywhere.
Yeah, people tell me that all the time. They always tell me that. I hear that a lot.
Yeah. From yesterday, is there one like moment or sequence that stands out that was just like really awesome in your from your own game?
Yeah, it was definitely getting the guillotine on the big dude because that's kind of my move, and he gave it a real hard fight, and I've always believed if I could, I could beat the best wrestler in the world with a guillotine choke, and yesterday I kind of proved it. So, and he was a monster of a man. Like, there's not too many times where I feel dwarfed in any situation, and he was a monster. And just I've never felt something so powerful and just scary, and to actually beat him and to feel him tap when he tapped. I went to like a mounted guillotine, and when he tapped, it was the best feeling ever, probably. I
Incredible.
guess. Yeah. And you're so exhausted too. Like, by the time I choked him out, I had nothing left. It's like
Mm.
he either taps or I give up. So it's crazy.
That's incredible. And the setup to getting to it, was it something that you had planned or?
Yeah, yeah, just typical wrestlers got to go in on your hips to take you down, because basically wrestling is about controlling your opponent's hips. So they have to enter them some way, and he entered to take me down, and as he did that, I got his neck, and he fought it very well, but it's my specialty, so I was able to get it. The next match, I got there again, and the guy was able to fight it off. So, nothing's perfect, but that match it was the
Yeah,
first one. It was.
that's amazing. Yeah, I always wonder like when you're watching and you're watching the guys that you're going to fight next, right, in your division, and you're
Yes.
if he just watched tap someone out with
Yeah,
that
yeah,
protect my
yeah,
neck. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There was actually the guy I got in the fight my last match that I lost to. There was a couple times he tried to put me in Kesikatami, and I seen him do it to a couple guys earlier in the day and tap them out. And man, when he got me there, I was so scared. I got it out of there as fast as I could. So I was definitely watching him before. Definitely watching and learning.
Watching and learning, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Just for reference for our listeners, what weight category are you competing in right now?
I went in the 200 kilograms, which I could probably go smaller, but I find it's just easier not to worry about your diet. Like, I can eat
Mhm.
ice cream right up. Like, I always eat very healthy, but those little snacks that I'm used to having, I usually have to cut those out to make weight, and I didn't. So I I could be at which 100 kilograms is 220 pounds. So I walk around at like 205 on a fat day. So
Mhm.
it's pretty easy for me. And I don't feel smaller than those guys. They're obviously, they're sometimes a little bit bigger than me, but we're all pretty close. 5 or 10 pounds in jiu-jitsu is not much, I don't think, especially when you're already 200 pounds. You know what I mean? Another 5 or 10 on that guy, it's all the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize, I mean, when you came to train with us, I didn't realize that you were at 200 pounds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Better about my own performance now.
yeah.
I thought you were more like 190, but it's something that's actually challenging to gauge, right? Because some people wear
For
it
sure.
differently. It's like densely compact muscle, or like, it's just
For sure,
I,
for sure.
I kind of love hearing, because I was talking actually to Will in our podcast a couple days ago about about weight cutting, and I kind of love hearing that you're like, I just would rather not go through that, because
Yeah.
I often wonder like how that is for athletes long term, and even just in each fight. I mean, obviously it's a
Well, and
thing.
I also think you're putting yourself under so much stress because it's so stressful, and even more so in like fighting it like in MMA fighting, when you're actually fighting, it's even more so. But even in jujitsu, you're putting your body under all that stress and worry about injuries and all this stuff. If you're cutting all that weight on top of that, I just feel like it's a lot of undue stress on your body. And I think it's a little bit easier when you're younger too. Obviously, as you get older, I don't know. I could eat whatever I wanted when I was 25. I can't do that now. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So yeah.
Absolutely. I'm curious, what was the beginning of your journey as a martial artist? When did it start? How old were you? What got you into it?
I was pretty old. I was like 29, and I got myself sober and kind of like out of the partying mode, I guess, in my life, and like needed some direction. And I started going back to school for cooking, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed the structure of it too. I needed like that discipline and like when told to go to school and stuff again. I guess is basically what I needed, but it wasn't. I don't know. It just wasn't enough. I needed something else, and then I found jujitsu. And then once I found jujitsu, I was like, I'm gonna fight a bit. And I had about 20 pro MMA fights, and I loved it and enjoyed it. But it was definitely, it had to come to its end. And but yeah, so that's basically at 29, I started doing jujitsu so I could learn to fight.
I love
Yeah,
that.
I needed something competitive too. I quit hockey when I was probably about 19, 18, like most kids. And then there was nothing, you try and play beer leagues and it's not competitive. And then I had such a hungry, I'm competitive. I want to go to war with another person, a little physically. And you can't really do that in a lot. Like, you go play like mixed slow pitch or something. You can't,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? You can't go to war with the other team. That doesn't make sense. It's about fun. Same even golf, it's like you're going out with your buddies and playing around. But when you do jujitsu, like even when sometimes it's your best friend who you think the world of, and the next thing you know, we're trying to kill each other basically in an honorable, safe way.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I find the closer you are with somebody, the harder you go, generally.
Yeah, yeah, isn't that crazy? I know, I know, I know. And the more you trust them, like the more
Yeah,
you trust them too, like my real close friends who I've been training with forever, I'll get in the scariest positions with them, but I'm not gonna do that with some random person off the street too, you know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You can't make yourself a vulnerable to a stranger, but you can make yourself vulnerable to someone you care about. I guess that's what that goes back to.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
you start to know well, they're gonna they're gonna give you the heat
Yeah,
without
yeah,
taking
yes.
something.
Yes, yes,
So,
yes.
and you know their pathways, you know their game, their movement style and all of that. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. I love hearing about. I'm trying to remember who it was. Somebody had been playing hockey and then they got into martial arts and they were like, "Wait a second, this is my favorite part of hockey is like the fighting."
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
just like
yeah,
let's just
totally.
forget about everything else and
Yeah,
focus.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, that's how I was. Yeah, like I was like, oh, the fight, but the one thing about like in hockey, you can like lose your fight and it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? Like when you're when you're doing like professional fighting or grappling or whatever, if you win, it is such a high, and if you lose, it's such a low. You know what I
Mm.
mean? There's such extremes, and like in hockey, you can go out there and you can lose a fight, but you can still win the game. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
If you lose the fight in martial arts, it's a crappy day.
Mhm. Yeah, and so much more. Well, just a very different type of pressure because it's just you,
Yes,
right? You don't have
yes, yeah,
any
yeah,
people.
yeah,
It's all riding
yeah,
on your performance and your shoulders. Of
yeah.
of all the fights you've been in, what would you say has been like the hardest or like most challenging fight you've endured?
Nah, well, I definitely had some fights in MMA where they went all 3 rounds, and I basically got my ass kicked for all 3 rounds against really high level guys. And there's nothing like that where you're basically ready to die, but then there's a whole crowd there, and you don't want to tap out in front of a whole crowd, so you just bridge and fight out one more time and eat one more elbow. I had a couple. My last fight against Rodney Wallace, and there was a fight in the middle of my career against Jesse Taylor where they basically just beat me up for 3 rounds. And definitely both those ones stick out in my mind for sure. Where I took, you have to go somewhere dark in your head to survive that stuff, or even wanted to survive it. You know what I mean? Like I think back on it now, and it's like, why wouldn't you just tap out? But when you're in that moment, you're just like, no, I gotta. And there's that hope too, that glimmer of hope that maybe you can make a comeback somewhere. A guillotine away. That's what I used to always say. You were a guillotine away from changing the day.
Was there anything specific that you would like say to yourself in those fights?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. There's a few times too. I remember one time I was actually in a fight against Cody Cran, and he was he got we were go, it was a war. We were going back and forth. It's actually on YouTube, and he got on top of me late in the second, and he was just wailing down on me. And I remember thinking in that moment, quitting would be easier than this. Like I remember thinking that I'm like quitting. It's got to just quit. It's gonna be easier this because I was so exhausted. And then I just think of like I had to go telling all my coaches that I just quit in there. That just
Mm,
quickly went through my head, and then I just sat up right away and guillotine choked him and got him. And it was like, okay, okay, you got through that moment, you know. But it just it's so hard. It's like people must find that when they're climbing mountains or Everest or something like that too, where you must think, oh, just quitting must be easier than this. But then you're like, no, you gotta just push on. Quitting's the easy thing to do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Until you think about
Yeah.
what that would be like. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you end up winning that fight by
Yes,
guillotine?
yes, yes, I did. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was awesome. It was definitely a highlight for me in my career for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. I love that. Just that probably having that experience once. I mean, to varying degrees, you've had that experience
Yeah,
you're like, oh, like this is like really hard, and
yeah,
then whatever, you escape or you end up coming
yeah.
up really reinforcing that. I
Yes.
was It's amazing how much our minds are ready to quit way before our bodies. Like our bodies are like
Yeah.
still got a lot of steam. Like
And I always say in jujitsu, our mind sometimes plays tricks on us. Like we
mm,
think like, oh, it'll just be easy to be lazy. Like you do something lazy, and then that person, like if they're good, they mess you up for it. You know what I mean? They'll start to twist you up on this crazy angle because you're lazy with your arm. And it's like it's weird when you fatigue and like you'll be crazy tired and you know not to give up your back, but then all of a sudden you just give up your back, and it's because of that fatigue. And we say it lots in jiu-jitsu, fatigue makes cowards of us all. And it's like,
mm,
when you get exhausted, it doesn't matter how badass you are, you'll make a bad decision.
mhm.
Just the way it
Yes.
is.
What's your current training schedule like? Like what are you training most right now?
Well, this was tough. I've been home taking care of my mom for like 2 weeks. So over that, I wasn't training too much. I do have some mats here. I'd get down and stretch and stuff and do that. And I got over to Vernon a few times to train there at PTT Vernon. But other than that, it was more mental than anything because I trained a lot over the last year. I've been just working my tail off in Calgary, really. And even when I was out in Salt Spring too, we trained lots for how much I was working there too. Yeah, so just lots of training, but obviously, I train at two different gyms in Calgary, so I think that gives me a big advantage too, because getting two different like looks, you know what I mean? Like you're at two different places, and two different high level places too, not just two busy gyms, like two really excelled gyms.
Mhm.
So I think that helps me a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And at like in Calgary, what are you mostly training? Is it mostly jujitsu or?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm mostly all jujitsu. We wrestle a little bit there because there's just so many good wrestlers in Calgary, so you kind of can't help it. But even then, when with a good wrestler, I play the safe route and get on my butt and play guard just because being an older guy, it's hard to wrestle. It's hard on your body. It doesn't. There's no forgiveness. You can't wrestle light, so yeah, I just really focus on all my jujitsu, and I'm a submission guy. I don't, I never beat anyone on points. If I'm down on points with a few seconds left, the only way I'm beating them is like a Hail Mary submission. That's just my style. That's how I've always been, and I don't want to win on points anyways. If I'm not tapping the guy, I don't care. I need to tap them. I need to tap them to feel good about myself. Well, it's one thing if you like, you're all over a guy and he just survives and survives and survives and you're not able to finish him. That does happen too, but for the most part, I need to submit my opponent. So I'm very heavy on training all my submissions for sure.
Mhm. That makes sense. I think in a real life situation that nobody cares about.
Yes. Yeah. No, but I started this for doing for fighting, right? Like when I started jujitsu, we used to look at everything like if we were in a street fight, we'd always say that kind of stuff. You'd probably do this or you'd do that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a different. Well, I mean, the points system is actually going to help you in a street fight too, because you're holding a position. So
Yes.
if striking's involved, it's going to be
Yeah,
beneficial.
no, there's a point to
Yeah,
the system. It's not pointless. It's just you know what I mean. If there's a way to beat someone, it's way more gratifying if you get them to tap or say tap or choke
absolutely.
them out would even be better.
Yeah, just put them to sleep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, nice little lullaby. Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious if you, in your life, like, so you started martial arts at 29. You had
Yes.
like quite a bit of adulthood before then. How has training martial arts impacted you in the rest of your life, like in how you show up in your relationships, in your work?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely saved my life. That's for sure. I definitely like it. I'm obsessed with it. It's all I do 24/7. If I'm not doing it, I'm thinking about it. So it's definitely, and it gives me a job now too. You know what I mean? It's everything. But I grew up, my dad's a hockey guy. So I grew up with my dad, like, he's never gone to work a day in his life. He just lives his job. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't really go to work. He's just always at work because he just lives it. And I think I'm kind of like that with jujitsu now too, where it's just like,
You're
people ask me what I do, and I like want to say like I do jujitsu. What do you mean? What do I do? You know what I mean? Like people
Yeah,
always said to me, they're like, "Well, no, but what do you do for a living?" And it's like, "No, jujitsu. I do jujitsu." Like obviously, you can't. It's hard to make money off sometimes, but still, it's like I don't know. It's what I'm always doing.
yeah. And so you have like a job aside from jujitsu as well.
Yeah. Of course, I do work a little bit of masonry with my buddy Will there and other things because
Yeah.
I haven't been able to make enough from it yet, but I hope someday to definitely. I don't know how yet, but hopefully maybe a gym, maybe I definitely have done some seminars. That's always a possibility too. Do more of those. The one thing it's tricky too because if you're teaching a ton, then you're never really training. So it's like trying to find that balance of like teaching enough where you can make some money doing what you love. But if you're just teaching all the time, you're never training. I've seen that happen lots too, where guys are just teaching and never really training. And
Mhm.
so it's I'm trying to find the balance with that. And I pick up job bouncing, of course. I kind of hate it. I don't drink alcohol, so like I hate being around alcohol. But I work at a pub in Calgary occasionally, that Dixon's Pub. And most people have heard of it. They have lots of live bands, and I work like metal shows and stuff. Not that I'm into that music or anything, but it's a pretty easy way and safe way to make money too. I'm not really, you know what I mean? You just got to control the mosh pit. You know what I mean? It's not really. I'm not like breaking up fights or dealing with gangsters or any of that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah,
And it
that's cool.
works good. I've always said bouncing is good if you want to be a martial artist because you don't want to really go to training tired. But if you can go to your job tired, and that's the one thing about bouncing, it always starts late at night or later on. You're not usually going to work till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So then you can go train your ass off, and then you can go bounce tired. You can't go do like masonry or construction tired, but you can go bounce tired. So I
Yeah,
always kind of got sucked into that job. Much like security too. All night security is the same way. I know some guys do that, but
yeah,
yeah,
totally. It's the for every martial artist who I've spoken to who want like you want to be training 4 hours a day, and then the rest of the
yeah,
time you want to be like studying, and it's just like it
Yeah.
gets into you, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know, like our coach Colton, he's like, nothing else is real, only jujitsu is real. Like, that's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like. I love that, just that awareness of like how you can fit it in, right? How you can fit in the
Yeah.
training, and then have your evenings
Yeah.
go.
And I definitely, they always talk about sacrifices, and like I've like, I've had like people like, you don't. It's hard to have a career when you have so much love for jujitsu. You know what I mean? Like people are like, oh, why don't you go back to school to do this trade or that trade? And it's like, well, and then when am I going to do jujitsu when I'm going back to school to be an electrician? You know what I mean? I'll have to be doing electrician shit all the time. I won't be able to do jujitsu. So it's tricky, and you want to, and we're all obsessed. Like anyone who like starts to get good at something and you have that passion to like excel at it or be the best in the world at it. You know what I mean? It's hard to shut that off. You know what I mean? I try to take a week off training, man. I make it like day 2 and I'm going crazy.
Mhm.
Maybe day 1.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely, I would say there's, for people who really get into it, there's like an almost like an, not almost, there's an addiction element to it where
For
you're like
sure, for sure.
very, I definitely can relate to that too. And
And nothing
like,
else satisfies it. That's the other thing. Like once you get that taste of it, like once I can go like, I mean, the one time I went on holidays and they had a weight room, and I used to lift lots of weights, and they had a weight room at the hotel. We were in the Dominican Republic, I believe. So it was something. And man, after the first, like, yeah, we're one night it was okay. Gave me the fix, for one night. It was like better than nothing, right? But then by day 2, I was like, oh man, I ain't going back there. That's boring, like you need that, you know what
mhm.
I mean? You need that fix of the drug that you want, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, I haven't ever, I mean, I've always had something, like when I was younger, I danced a lot or did yoga or like other things like
Yes.
that. Thing has actually like lit me up as much as
Yeah.
like in the way that, I mean, and dance is something I have a huge passion for as well, but there's something about it that is this blend of like playfulness as well as like just being a total savage and like
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
going after it, and like the
Yeah.
endless learning. Like there's just
Yeah.
there's never a dull moment. Like there's always something new to learn, something you want to
And
train. Yeah,
and even relearn sometimes. That's the crazy one too. Like sometimes you learn the same lesson over and over and like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's
yeah,
wild.
yeah,
But
very.
I see there is a lot of overlap too. Like people who like dance definitely like jujitsu because I know even in the guys, a lot of the 10th Planet guys in California, they all came from breakdancing. There's a whole crew of them, the Martinez brothers.
Oh yeah.
They all came from like breakdancing.
Mhm.
It's like there's definitely, you know what I mean? And you also see like people's, obviously you're like how you do jujitsu is affected by who teaches you, but you also
Mhm.
see people's attitude, like who they are in their jujitsu too. You know what I mean? Like you'll
Mhm.
see like this, how they express themselves through their jujitsu.
Yeah.
Like some guys will just be a spaz, and it's like, but once you really get to know that guy, you see why he's a spaz,
Yeah, yeah,
or even a girl sometimes, that girl is such a spaz, and it's like, yeah, but if you knew her, you'd see why.
yeah. Totally. Well, I mean, we train with like a small group of people who in each of their journeys, I feel like I've gotten to know them like on the
Yes.
mat, and many of them outside of the mats, and it is like we all have this, it's like jujitsu is almost like this refinement process. Like when I started jujitsu, my fighting style was like pure chaos. Like it was just like I was a spazzy, like quintessential spazzy white belt, and like, and when that version of me as a fighter started to die, and I became slightly more like technical and thoughtful, and like actually have a plan or like an awareness of what maybe I should be doing, I actually felt kind of sad. I was like, oh, I missed that. Like,
Yeah,
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 I was like, just like, I have no idea what I'm gonna do, so I'm just gonna be really erratic and hope it
yeah.
works. It's like, Yeah.
It's funny when I'm like coaching people and I talk to them about like being less spazzy. I always try to explain to them too, like you don't have to abandon that 100%. You know what I mean? Because like right away, if you like tell someone to abandon what they're doing, they're like, "Oh my, it's too much for them." So I'll sometimes be like, "It's just be less spazzy. Don't
Yeah.
spaz the whole time. Just spaz here."
Yeah.
So that's where that comes from, like you saying that.
Totally. Yeah, there are moments where it's fun to like unleash that or like or
Yes,
activate
yes.
that.
and
Yeah.
and be wild and take some risks. You know what I mean? Like I train one of the guys I train with. He's out in Toronto now, but he used to train with me. I used to go train with him in Vancouver. Mike Breakfield, his name, and he takes crazy risks. You know, like he'll give up his back, or he'll do the craziest things. Where like if you were coaching him, you'd be like screaming at him, "What are you doing?" But that's him, right? And if you know him and his personality, it like he kind of come his that's he does jujitsu like he is. He's a weirdo. He does it weird and different, and not the way you're normally supposed to do it. You know.
Yeah.
But then you'll meet like there'll be like I sometimes I train in Vernon with a black belt. He's like a hard nosed Russian, and he's like some kind of computer programmer. And he just does everything by the book, It's like bing, bing, bing. He's just like exact, stubborn. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like that how their personalities come out through jujitsu. It's cool. It's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like a meticulousness to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's what
And
I
then
go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Yeah, well, as I've like trained in different gyms, that's what I've noticed is like there's this thing that we all are calling jujitsu, but then there's everyone's like interpretation of it or like what they bring their own
Yeah,
of it. Yeah.
yeah. And you never know, like it's crazy too, because I've traveled around and obviously I have a bit of a reputation. And especially I went down in the Washington area and traveled around some gyms and I'd already like I'd go to tournaments down there and then beat everyone. And then I would go into their gyms and not beat everyone, I do well down there. I don't want to get
Yeah.
off the keel, but I had a lot of success down there. And you go into their gyms and they see you and then man, they come after you. Like sometimes they want to kill you. And then sometimes they're really nice to you. And
Mhm.
sometimes they're welcoming, but then they still try and kill you. And then some of them are like, I've had the craziest situations where I think, oh my God, this guy's going to kill me. And he won't say nothing and he'll just shake my hand. And I can tell within seconds, no, he just wants to play around. And he doesn't have to say, let's go light. Like people always talk about, oh, let's go light. And then they go hard. But
Yeah.
he just, with no communication, he's just this big monstrous guy. And through just the original contact, you can tell that we're gonna just be nice and play around. Because some guys are old. They don't, you know what I mean? If I'm going too hard on them, they'll get hurt and they can't go to work tomorrow.
Hmm.
People lose sight of that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's one of the most beautiful things about training jujitsu is the like a very different way of communicating with other people.
Yes.
I have loved my own experience of like learning things about myself, understanding things about myself, watching myself panic, regain,
Yeah.
whatever, like all the different things, but then
Yeah.
also with others where they come in with whatever they're bringing to the mats that
Yeah.
and it's very cool. I got to train at 10th Planet in Austin a couple weeks
Yeah.
ago, and
Nice. I've heard that's the best.
it's really really fun place to train. Like I was like I would very happily come here 6 days a week. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
really lit me up being there. And I rolled with Lex Friedman. I don't know if you know who he is,
Yes, of course. Yes.
but I didn't know who he was. So
Oh my God. Oh my God.
everyone else was like would come up to me and introduce themselves, like shake, give me their name, like do
Yeah.
you want to roll, shake my hand, bump,
Yeah.
slap bump, like let's go.
Yeah.
When he came up to me, he didn't say anything, but I was like, oh, do you want to roll? And like he kind of like nodded or something. So next thing you know, we're rolling. I have no idea who this guy is at all. And it was fun, like a lot of fun. And then afterwards, I was like, what's your name? And he's like, Lex. And I shook his hand and I was like, Alex. And he was like, Lex. Like he obviously was like, how do you not know who I am? Right. Like, and then my friend who I was traveling with at the end of class, he was like, how was your role with Lex Friedman? And I was like, who's Lex Friedman? Oh no. Like, but I
That's
loved
awesome.
that too. Like it was just for me probably great that I didn't know who he was.
Yeah,
that it
yeah,
was,
yeah.
I was like in a room full of strangers. The only other person I knew was my friend, and everybody else was like, and because it's no gi, also don't know what their
Yeah,
belt
I know.
is. So
It
you're just
really
like,
changes it too, eh? Isn't that
yeah,
crazy?
it was really actually quite liberating, I would say, to like, and I did have a moment in that gym where I was like, wow, like so much appreciation for my little, like our little school on Salt Spring,
Yes.
Rachel and Han and Colton, all the people I
Yeah.
trained with, like our teachers are all the people I trained with. Those experiences have given me enough confidence to like walk.
Yeah.
And like I was kind of like, oh my god, am I really here? And then it was fine.
Yeah.
It's
No,
still
they got
jujitsu.
yeah, they have a really special thing going there. Me and Will noticed it right away. You know what I'm saying? We could tell we were, and that's why we came back as much as we could. Obviously, they're definitely do, but that's jujitsu, right? It's like people come together and share the experience. And Austin has become like that's like the hotbed of jujitsu now. Like when back in the day it used to be Southern California, that was where well, I'm sure it's still awesome there, but just mostly all the high level guys have all migrated to Austin. There's new gyms opening up there all the time. It's wild. It's a
Yeah.
wild place. Don't know who's going there next, but some big world champion. I can't remember who it was, but he's moving there too now. So it's
Oh
just
yeah.
endless.
It's just, yeah, it definitely seems like a
And
hot
there's
spot.
so many people in Austin. I used to live in Belton, Texas, just north. And
Okay.
man, there is so like, and that was a long time ago. Don't get me wrong. That was when I was probably 20. But that Austin area, there it's so dense with people. Us in Canada, it's hard to comprehend how dense
Mm,
some of those states are with people. Like the
yeah.
population there is just it's crazy.
Yeah. Fastest growing, or one of the fastest growing cities in the US right now, I believe.
Yeah, and man, like and the U.S. is growing. You know what I mean? That's
Yes.
no small feat.
Yeah. But it doesn't, Austin to me, I mean, I've been to Austin 7 or 8 times now. It doesn't feel like, it feels very friendly. Like, it doesn't feel like a big
Mm,
city in an unfriendly way. Like, it has this small town, like, everybody is your friend. Obviously, I'm bringing my own experience with
yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
No, I agree. It's weird too because like everyone has a gun though. So like I find that a little bit off-putting because everyone in their glove compartment has a gun.
Mm,
But and you say that Austin's pretty good, but when we lived down there, anytime we knew someone who went into Houston, they would get mugged or robbed or
mm,
so you know what I mean? So you know what I
yeah.
mean? And I also it's crazy though how it works down there because another thing is like I drive up here tons. I'm driving all over to compete and to go travel at different gyms. I obviously kind of a road warrior, if you may say it. But you go around and you get on someone's tail here, or if you get on someone's tail in Texas, they just pull over and wave at you. It's the most efficient way to travel in the history of mankind. Like, because as soon as you want to get past them, you just get on their butt and they pull slowly over and they wave at each other.
Right.
And and like, is that because everyone has a gun in their glove
I
compartment?
don't
I
know.
always wondered that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it's like you that does not fly up here at all. You never do that. Like
No, you
some,
have in Victoria, you've got like driving into Victoria from the ferry, you have
yeah.
2 lanes. Everybody's going 100. They don't know how the passing lane works. I'm like, oh
No,
my gosh, guys, like
I know,
it's
and I'm
brutal.
talking. They make it work down there with one lane. How
Yeah.
does that like? It's always blowing my mind. It's always blowing my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, well, and it's interesting is I like the first time I went down there, I remember my oldest son actually was like, "Why are you going to Texas? Like open carry, like now
Mm.
this is like 4 years later, his whole perspective on the world has totally changed. He's been living
Yeah,
he lived
yeah,
in Colombia, he lived in Mexico, he's living in southern Brazil right now. Like he'd grown up.
nice.
We live in a really small, well, you've been here. It's like very
Yeah,
small.
yeah,
I call this place the Shire, right? It's just like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
very quaint and like safe.
It's like a
But
comic book. I said, it reminds me of
yeah,
a comic book.
totally.
It's too nice.
It is. But like
Yeah.
I never actually have seen anybody with a gun in Texas, like or
No,
in Austin.
no, I
You know,
agree. I agree. I agree. I agree. I agree. No, I know.
but
But yeah, it's weird.
I'm sure there are neighborhoods or cities
For
that
sure. There has to be.
avoid, but when I went to LA, I remember that trip, like I always like to go and walk around downtown in cities at nighttime. When I was a teenager, I lived in Vancouver. Same thing. I'd like walk myself home. I'm not recommending anybody do this, but that was just my way of like traveling. And LA was very different. Like the people I was traveling with were like, no, 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 like you're not doing that here. Like, it's a different kind of dangerous. But yeah, it's I don't know, very interesting to also like being raised in Canada. There was such a stigma around people carrying guns, right? And then I think about somewhere like Switzerland where they have like actually really low crime rate, low domestic violence, all these things. Almost everybody is trained, or at one point anyways, the men in Switzerland were trained to use carry it in their home, but there's a whole like respect around it. It's not just like,
it's way different. It's way different. I lived in Switzerland a little bit. I've been to Switzerland a little bit. My dad was a hockey guy, so I've traveled a lot where there was hockey. And obviously there was hockey in Switzerland, so we've been there a bunch. And I knew about that too. Yeah, everyone's trained in the army, and there's lots of guns, and basically every man is supposed to have a gun at home, I think is how it's supposed to work there. I don't know if you have to, but it's kind of every man should have a weapon at home. And there's no, you never see gun violence in Switzerland. Well, I'm sure there is here and there. Obviously, there obviously has to be, but for the most part, it's not like in the States for sure. My cousin is a cop in North Las Vegas, and my mom. I never forget. We were down visiting him in Vegas, and she asked him if she's like, does he ever pull his gun out? And he told me that he was already in thousands of shifts, and he'd only had one shift where he hadn't pulled his gun out. One shift.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy to me. Like, imagine that, like you're a cop and you're just constantly pulling out your gun. Constantly. It's wild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like it's not the weapon, it's like the whole around it and how it's used. That's gonna be like, I'm sure.
And I'm sure he's in situations where he better have that weapon out. You know what I mean? He's told me like he goes to break up parties of like young like Mexican gangbangers. And he's like, man, they're ready. You know what I mean? If I didn't have a gun, they would stab me in the back.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a weird thing that we get into, and it kind of comes in with like it comes with confidence in martial arts too, which is funny to me too because I think if you have a lot of self confidence, which lots of time most of us in martial arts lack confidence, that's why we get into it, and then you can get some of that confidence, and then you'd think people would move away from those things, but I don't know. I don't get guns.
Is your cousin was martial arts a big part of his training?
No. He started in the army, and he was like, and I think he went into special forces, but I don't think he really felt like he was improving the world. You know what I mean? So he decided when he got home, he was just easy, and he became a SWAT. He was actually one of the guys whenever that guy was blasting people out of the hotel window. At a country concert, I believe it was in Las Vegas, he was actually one of the SWAT guys that was called in to deal with it. So yeah.
Wow.
Americans are just obsessed with guns and war.
That's a whole other kind of training. Yeah. Like just thinking about what would go into that kind of training, and it's interesting. So yeah, like that's a rabbit hole. Like where do we go? I'm curious what you said. You lived in like just north of Austin in your 20s. What brought you there?
My hockey. My dad was running a pro hockey team down there. He'd been working in the junior hockey league in BC for years, but he decided to just try something different. He went down there. It was a disaster. We were back a year later, but it was interesting. We got to see a different way of living, and I mean, I learned a lot down there. I was 20, and just to move to Texas and just see the everyday life. I wasn't able to work that much just because I only had a living visa. So you could do a little bit of work under the table, but I couldn't really like go out and get like a real job because there was great jobs around too. The work, there was so much work in those. There's so many factories and industry stuff around us. Oh, there was just
Mhm.
great paying jobs everywhere.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's like that anymore, but
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I know that when I go there, I'm like in a bubble of my own experience, but
yes,
it's
yes.
not really like living there, or you know what I mean?
I
Like,
know, I know. You get such a like you almost get a weird taste. It's like well, it's like holiday, right? Like you holiday somewhere and you have a great time. But like if you go there and you're just working the whole time, you know what I mean? Like even when we were in Salt Spring, we really enjoyed it. But man, when we weren't enjoying it, we were working our tails off. So it's
yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Like, and it was like by the time we were getting out of there, we were like, oh man, we can't wait to get off this island. And the only reason we couldn't wait to get off the island is because we didn't want to work no more. You know what I mean? It
yeah,
wasn't because it wasn't because we didn't like the island. So
yeah,
it kind of depends what you're doing, right? And like sometimes you go somewhere and you go on holidays, and then of course you can have a great perspective of it. Oh, everything's great, and you're missing rush hour, and you're doing this and you're doing that. But when you live there all the time and you're hitting that rush hour traffic every day at the same time,
yeah.
it changes your perspective on
Everything
places.
has,
But that's the beauty of visiting places, though, too, right? You kind of get it,
yeah,
you get the best of it, not the worst of it.
totally, absolutely. I'm curious. I love to ask what your thoughts are on rites of passage. Excuse me, I was gonna
Bless
sneeze
you.
in the middle of a sentence. Your thoughts on rites of passage and initiation. This is kind of something that I've been tracking as a theme through these Warriors Raised episodes. And it's
Like,
something,
like, what do you mean? Could you explain that better?
yeah, for sure. Well, like I often think about like tribal cultures where at a certain age, especially for men, around 12, 13, 14, they would be given the opportunity to go hunting with the older,
Yeah,
right? And there's like there, depending on the culture, there are many different rites of passage that are basically
yeah,
testing, are you going to be a liability or an asset as a hunter? Like, are you someone we can trust to A, not get yourself killed, and B, not get anybody else killed? And that would be like one of the first initiations into manhood, but then many cultures have like ongoing
yeah,
initiation,
yeah,
which I think is a big part of like the warrior archetype, or the especially men who are drawn to like, I need to go fight again, right? Like it's like you need to
yeah.
have to like test yourself and see how you're doing against others who are also training what you're training. So I'm always curious, like if you have a personal story that you want to share, or even just what your thoughts are. Like I mean, I have my own thoughts of how this not being super present in our culture is affecting our culture as a whole. And then I also see where it is present, like hockey. You probably had different, like being with the team and like winning,
Yes,
losing,
yes.
trying, all those things. But yeah, this is a fairly open-ended question. But if you have a story that you want to share, or any philosophy around the importance of rites of passage and initiation.
No, I just think like as like someone especially just coming off a competition, I think it's important that we test ourselves. But I also think too, like I also see it sometimes with certain girls, definitely. Well, not all girls, definitely. I don't want to be come across sexist, but certain girls don't feel that need to compete like guys do either. So that's sometimes that's fine too, but they still love jujitsu. Like I know a
Mhm.
lot of girls were that they're high level, but they don't want to go to no tournament, get in a
Mhm.
war with another girl. That doesn't interest them, right? So
Mhm.
I don't think like competing is necessary for everyone, but for
Mhm.
me, competing is just like testing myself and like the nerves and battling all that, and we all go through it. Like we're in that stands, and I'm hanging out with like nine other black belts basically, and maybe a few of them are brown belts, but we're basically all going to be black belts if we're not black belts already. And we're all talking about why do we do this. We're so all stressed, and we're like, why do we do this, why do we do it, and we all say it, and we all laugh about it, and then and all of our girl, and anyone who has a real girlfriend, and they compete, they know that they're like their girlfriend and knows that they're gonna be a bitch the day before. You know what I mean? Like it's just the way it is. Like,
Yeah.
we're all having little breakdowns and flipping out over parking tickets. And, you know what I mean? But it's part of, that's part of it too. That's part of the process. You just gotta like work through all that, and especially if you have a great day after that, that's really great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, I can relate to. I watched my youngest son has competed a few times in the last.
And how's that for you?
It's been really great, like learning how to be a mom in those situations, like because
Yes.
it's like, and sometimes I'm like, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be watching. I should not be the one driving him to go compete. Like, and it's funny because my oldest son lives in Brazil, but my oldest son will be like the last time my youngest son competed, right before he was gonna fight, he suddenly was like, I gotta call Jason. I gotta call my oldest brother. So he's on the phone and like and it's just hilarious. It's like my oldest
That's
son will
cool.
text me and be like, Mom, you have to stop being such a mom right now. He's fine. He's not injured. He can do nogi. Like he's just like, so like I'm a fairly like tough love kind of mom, anyways. But I do have moments where I'm like, it would be better if you just like if I wasn't here.
Yeah.
Not that he gets soft, but it's also when I first started training, I was like, I had a really hard time training jujitsu and then having my youngest son there, or my friend's toddler. Like if I was like holding their baby or toddler, like while they did around, and then like I'd give the baby
Yeah.
back, I go do jujitsu, I would suck because it like softened me too much.
Yeah, I
Like I
know.
can't
I
fight
know.
anybody now. I'm like full of love hormones.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's crazy, how that works.
it is.
Yeah. Some days too, I have a bad day and you go to the gym and you're just in a terrible mood and I just start twisting people up and I just feel way better after. It's kind of
Yeah.
fucked up to think about, but that's the honest truth.
Well, absolutely. And I think that's why we're all there, right? Like we're all drawn
Yeah,
to, because I don't know. I mean, there's something about having that kind of intensity in terms of challenging yourself physically that allows for greater emotional and mental mastery to happen. In my own very like personal experience, that's been, you
for
know,
sure.
I personally don't. I've competed twice. Back to what you said about not all girls want. I like totally do not like competing. I like,
No, and that's great. That's great. And it's awesome knowing that. Knowing that
yeah,
it's not you don't have to like. There's my dad was he used to always talk about like if you want to be involved, like like everyone he meets lots of people because he's a hockey guy. Everyone wants to be a hockey guy. We live in Canada, right? And
yeah,
everyone's okay, but he used to always talk about you got to find your niche. And everyone wants to be Gordon Ryan. Everyone wants to be the world champion and the best. But that's not for everyone. We need the nerds that come and help. There's I find I call them warm up nerds. You have guys at your gym that don't really compete, but they come and help everyone warm up. You know what
yeah,
I mean? And they're perfect because they're not distracted by they're not competing. So like when
yeah,
someone needs their full attention, they can totally give it. And it's like, and then they feel, like part of it. They feel like they're
yeah,
contributing to the competition. So then you get that
totally,
feeling of team, even though it's just you versus that guy out there. But you have
yeah,
your buddy help you warm you up, and you were
yeah,
drilling guillotines on him, and then you hit a guillotine on your opponent.
yeah. Yeah,
That's cool.
I've have played that role many times and I love that, where
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
someone would be
And
like,
we,
hey, I need a water bottle, and like I'm the
yeah,
quickest one to
man.
go get whatever, it's just like,
And you
yeah,
know how much those people are truly appreciated by those competitors for the most part too. Like obviously maybe in the time and maybe in that moment because they're so busy and stressed out they don't say thank you. But
yeah,
man, I'm so appreciative of those people. I can think of countless, like of course I have a hard time remembering all their names, but I think of so many places I've trained where there's guys like that who just come into tournaments and hey, do you need this? Hey, do you need that? Someone
yeah,
forgot something in their car and they're running out to the car to go grab it. It's cool.
totally. And I find like for me personally, I'm still challenged enough in the sport, just on the mats, rolling against my teammates. Like I can create that, like I have teammates who are willing to like go hard enough that it's
Yeah,
like, that I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, this is challenging for me. When I went to compete both times, I was like gentle. Like I was like, I
yeah,
actually could
yeah,
not get my brain to be like, we're gonna be rough with these women. Like one time I was sweeping someone, and I'm not kidding you, like midair, I like slowed down and put her down gently. I was like, it was like a comedy, but also not. Like the guys who I trained with were
yeah,
watching and they're like, what are you
yeah,
doing? Like,
yeah.
fuck her
Well,
up. I was like, I can't. I don't want to hurt this person. It was like,
and
I
it's
tried
but
after this too. Like, no.
yeah, exactly. And it's funny because it's frustrating to them. They're like frustrated, and you're like, "Well, I don't have that in me, man." I've seen it a lot of it, and and that's how I knew. Like when I first competed, I was scared and I was so nervous, but I was like, "Oh my god, where's this been my whole life?" Like I could
Mm,
tell right away. It was like what I was missing. It's what I needed, and
yeah.
and I carried on from there. But I see it the other way. I see people that are really good at martial arts and they just go out there and crumble and fall apart and beat
Yeah.
themselves up. And then I've seen those people even quit. Then they end up quitting. It's like, how
Yeah.
about you just never compete and stay
Yes.
at you know what I mean? And you can stay there and help forever.
Yeah.
And
I'm like,
yeah.
I'm open to competing again at some point in the future. I think it's great for me. It's mostly a mind game. And
Yeah.
like my
It's
coach would be like,
crazy.
you have to remember that these women, these girls are like you. Like,
Yes.
just, like, don't forget that they're also, but I'm like, I'll slap bump and I'll start thinking about like how cute her babies would be. Like, I'll just, it's not
Yeah.
right. It's terrible. But
Yeah, and it's weird what goes through your mind sometimes too out there in competition. It's weird. You can be so focused, but yet something weird goes through there. It's the mind's an interesting thing.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely I don't know. It's been a curve. Yeah. Yeah. It never gets old though. That's for
Yeah, no, it sure doesn't. It sure
yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah. And being like you said, like helping people get ready. There are a few times we had this one competition, I think about 6 months ago, where two teenagers who had just started training like a couple months before that both decided to compete. And they were there without their parents, and that's basically what I did. I put on my gi. I was like, I'll help you warm up. Like, one guy, I was like, so what do you need to work on? He's like, actually, I don't know any submissions. I'm like, oh shit, we've got like 20 minutes, let's go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But then
That's
that,
so
and then
cool.
seeing them and like watching their process and like cheering them on and watching their emotional journey, like that I love.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, probably it's more of like a mom role too.
And it's interesting sometimes too. See guys get broken too. Like sometimes you'll see a guy like totally get broken and devastated. He's on the verge of crying, and then
Yeah,
you see him at the gym Monday morning, and he's ready to go and working on everything he messed up. And then you know what I
yeah,
mean. It's cool to see the turn. You know what I mean.
yeah.
They just and not settling for that. They're like, no, I'm not sucking at this. I got to get good at this.
Well, and I mean, my youngest son went through that where he was just like not like his first few competitions, he wasn't performing how he wanted to. He wasn't
Yeah,
happy,
yeah,
and it was like this really clear option of like, okay, give up or like double down and train harder. And the way that paid off was huge. I think that's like, I mean, I've seen myself and others come back from competing and you're like, okay, just like double down, go harder. Even from a
yeah,
class where you're like, what the heck? I just had my ass
yeah.
handed to me for like 90 minutes, and you're like, okay, same time tomorrow. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird how you'd want to go back to that too, eh? It's weird. Some days, yeah, like you're so devastated and you're so heartbroken about it, but then next day morning you wake up and you're excited to go back and do it again. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it is strange. It's like it went really well. You want to go back. It went really terribly. You want to
You
go
want to
back.
go back? Yeah, I know it's wild, eh? It's wild. Sometimes
Yeah.
you want to go back more when it was terrible because you got to get better. You got to
Yeah.
improve.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like super humbling. Yeah, absolutely. So what's on your like right now? What's next for you in terms of
Just heading back to Calgary. Gonna have to, I'm gonna compete some more. I definitely felt good after this one. I definitely, I'm sore and I'm hurting, but my health is still good, and I feel like I should compete a few more times before my time is gone. So I'll probably look to get in another tournament here in the next couple months. There's one coming up at the end of Spokane, or in Spokane at the end of September, but I haven't really committed to anything. I gotta get my butt back to Calgary and work a bit and just get back to training. Get better at something. Get better at guillotines or footlocks or something. Some submissions. So yeah.
Nice. I love it.
And I might be going back to Salt Spring too for some work too, so that might happen too.
Oh, that's great. We'd love to have you. We all learned a lot
Yeah.
while you were here.
Yeah. Well, you guys have a great gym there, and everyone's really cool. I'm very welcoming too. Like people always think they like to say, "Oh yeah, we have a super welcoming gym," and they don't. You know what I mean? They like, I mean, you only feel welcome there if you're from there.
Mhm.
But yeah, I know you guys definitely had a very well, but you could tell that's kind of that island attitude. You guys definitely had that. Where your island's beautiful, and you want people want to share it with you, so you share it with them as you share your gym with them. It was cool. We had a great experience there with everyone.
Yeah.
Very fond memories of there. Very fond. And even we went out to my buddy. I had a friend, a guy I had met in Lethbridge. He was more of a friend's friend than my friend. And then we went over to his house one day, and he had mats and a yoga room. We went there and rolled and stuff. I just had a really great time there. It's a cool
Yeah.
spot.
Is that Drew?
Yes, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
I've
yes,
trained
yes.
with him as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool dude. Cool dude. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I met him in Lethbridge years and years ago.
In Lethbridge, did you say?
Yeah.
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 Cool. Yeah. His martial arts journey has also been neat. Like just and what he brings
Yeah.
to the table. And yeah. Really
Yeah, and all of his yoga and everything. Yeah.
breath work. Yeah. I mean, I've been training with a concussion like most of the last year and a half. My concussion seems to be
From
going.
what would you get your concussion from?
Oh, like fluke warming up. Like I shrimped into somebody's knee. Like it was just like I wasn't even
Uh,
drilling anything. It was like lines of shrimping, and I decided I was going to do the best,
uh,
fastest, most precise shrimps. And I was just like going,
oh,
like shrimping. I don't have eyes in the back of my head. Like, don't tell
yeah,
me this is not true. But anyways, and I
uh,
shrimped right into his knee. He's a friend of mine. He was like, I I saw you coming and you were moving fast, but he just didn't
yeah,
very fast enough. And then same training partner, like a year and a half or a year later, knee on forehead, like the same spot, kind of
uh,
wild. But and again, not in an actual sparring, like just drilling.
yeah,
And yeah, I don't know. Concussion's an interesting experience for sure. And like training with concussion has been really um like there were times where I'd be training and I'd be frustrated, like be like, oh, I wonder how much further along I'd be if I wasn't training.
yeah,
But it also really gave me this whole other experience of like training in that state and developing such high level of trust. Like sometimes I go to class actually be feeling quite concussed, but I just take it one step at a time. Like, oh yeah, I can do
yeah,
this. Yes, I can do that. Oh, I might sit out for takedowns. Then I'm back in,
yeah,
and then just feeling it out. Like, can I train with this training partner, or like Gord or
yeah,
something I trained with a lot?
yeah.
He just
Well,
was
when
like,
you have a bad head, man, you want to be careful who you're with, for sure.
yeah, but also just through that, like developing such a high level of self trust, trust in our
Yeah,
bodies, trust in my training partners. Like so many times I've driven home from class and just like tears of joy and like appreciation for the
yeah,
club I train with and the people I train with and their level of like just I don't know, like of what we've created. It was really cool because I didn't. That was
everyone helping everyone, really, right? That's
yeah,
what
and
it
that
is.
like the saddest thing about concussion was the idea of not training martial arts. Like it was
Yeah.
like, but I was gonna say something else and then I lost it. Something else you said that I wanted to ask about, but
I've battled some concussion things when I was fighting. Where I started training Toshido, we were always famous for how hard we sparred, and it definitely, yeah, it's definitely stuff you got to be careful of. Head
where
traumas not to be messed with.
yeah, for real. Where was that? Sorry.
When I trained in Kelowna, like through my fighting career, through my MMA career, we were always known for just a real hard nosed gym, and we'd spar hard. And I
Yeah.
got so many concussions in that gym, and it was
Mhm.
like, I don't, now as you get older, you're not sure if it's worth it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's head trauma, especially what they're finding out in sports too. Like it's you know
Yeah.
these young kids, a lot of times they're killing themselves because of concussions. Lots of it's messing up their
Yeah.
lives. You know what I mean? It's crazy stuff, especially in football and hockey. The amount of like concussions you see is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And in fighting, sometimes we would like I'd have a concussion and I'd still go spar and fight.
Yeah.
It was like crazy. And I even remember specifically, actually, we would do things like you'd get a concussion in sparring, but you would know like you're not going to be really messed up till the next day. So like that last hour of sparring, you would just spar like a maniac because you're going to be concussed tomorrow anyways.
Yeah.
And like to think like did you put all that on your noggin?
Yeah.
It's crazy to me. Crazy.
I
And
yes.
what go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, I've done exactly what you just described,
Yeah.
and then recognizing my own like unhealthy addiction to this training, and then being like,
Yeah.
okay, now I have to learn how to dial back and learn how to be okay, not having every class be like this really intense peak experience, but having some of them be like, oh, that was gentler, and I
Yeah,
could walk up
yeah.
the stairs today.
Yeah, yeah, I know those little things, right? Yeah, yeah. And still test yourself in some way, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hmm. Do you have any philosophy that you would like to share with our listeners in terms of like what's kept you going through, I would say, like through fighting and training, but also like in other areas of life where that like blend between martial arts and the rest of the life happens?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's kind of different for everyone. Some people, you're just born into what you love. Like I always, for the longest time, thought it was hockey, and that's what I was raised in a house. As a Canadian kid, hockey, 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 hockey. But by the time I actually found jujitsu, it actually made me even happier than hockey ever made me. Especially as I got older. I think just the biggest thing is just trying to find something you love. But people do it different ways. Like some people can find a job that they don't really like, but they can make enough money and they can tough it out and
Mhm.
but then they can spend all their free money on their passion and they're
Mhm.
happy. And then there's other people, they just got to go all in, and I'm definitely an all in type of guy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I don't know, some of us are just like that. Just I had to go all in on jujitsu. I couldn't, and I can't. And when coming into it late, also later in age, it made me realize that I had no time to fuck around. If I want to get as good as I wanted. If I wanted to get world class at this, I had to get my nose to the grindstone now because I was already so far behind. And I always use that as motivation to just, stay disciplined, get my
Mhm.
butt to the gym every day, keep learning.
Mhm. In terms of your own like vision and desire for competing at a high level, did you get to experience that? Like, did you get to go and
Yeah, yeah, no, I definitely tested myself at the highest level. And even this weekend, I definitely am stepping in there against very terrifying dudes, and I'm enjoying it. Um, yeah, yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah, that's good. I think
You know,
that's
it,
such, oh,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think that's such an important thing to like to have that, like to have, there's a guy, there's a small group of people who we train jujitsu together. They also train Muay Thai. And like,
Uh-huh.
I went to class this morning for a bit. I have not really been training with concussion, but there was one guy who wanted to compete recently and there wasn't anybody in his division. Like they were like, no, we don't have anybody for you. It's like,
Yeah.
I think it was on Vancouver Island, but I think it's, yeah, just like I'm watching, we train with a lot of teenagers, you know, as well as 20 somethings, 30 somethings who are wanting to at some point experience high level competition. And I like getting there, you know, like it's on my mind because we watched the UFC fights last night, you know, and I'm
Yes.
always, what would your walkout song be? You're like, you know, can you,
Yeah.
would you fight this guy? Or like, you know, so yeah. Yeah. So that was my question, was like, do you feel like that part has been satiated for you? Like where you've got,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think well, like somewhat. Obviously, I still want to compete more, so obviously there's something left. But yeah, no, I definitely have. You know what I mean? And I'm definitely at the, I feel like my career is definitely as 45 and I got into this at 29. I'm definitely on my decline. I'm on my way out and and I in jujitsu is a big steroid sport. Don't get me wrong, everyone is steroided up. I'm 45 and I'm not on any steroids. I'm a big strong guy and I just work hard. So I don't want to like cheat either, you know what I mean? Or not that it's cheating because it's not, but I feel like I can only compete, you know what I mean, so high, you know what I mean? So I definitely feel like, you know what I mean, if I was really trying to compete at the highest level, I would probably be adding something like that to my my diet, but I'm not. So I think I've definitely admitted to myself that, you know what I mean? Because all the best guys in that sport really are on something. So, you know
Mhm.
what I mean? I definitely if you're asking if I feel on my way out, yeah, I definitely feel on my way out for sure. I've definitely
You cut out there,
I've
your audio cut out there. I all I heard was if you're asking, and then the audio cut out.
yeah, I just if yeah, I'm definitely my career's done. I'm definitely on my decline. It's my peaks, my highest moments are definitely behind me.
Yeah.
But I still feel like I have a little left in the tank. But yeah, no, I'm definitely on my decline.
Yeah.
On my way out, and you want to go out with some dignity too. You don't want to like keep going till you're like getting into by the mat with a walker. You know what I mean? You still want to be doing it right.
Yeah. I don't know. That might be kind of cool too. You're like 85, just
Yeah,
like we're just doing jujitsu, guys. No takedowns.
yeah. No takedowns. Yeah, both pulling guard with their
We're gonna be
walkers.
starting on the ground for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, it's like you either use it or you lose it, right? It's
Yeah. No, and I definitely, and I feel like especially hitting 45 as a man, I've definitely felt like physically I'm not, you know what I mean? When you're 29, and you see it, it's crazy at tournaments. You see like sometimes like a white belt will beat like a higher level guy, like a brown belt or something, a black belt, and you're like, how does that happen? And how that happens is they're hungrier, they're more savage, I guess. You use that word
yeah.
a few times, and even though they don't have the skill that guys, they just in competition they just make up with it just with their ferocity. So just definitely as I go older, I feel like I definitely feel like I talked to one of the other vets at the tournament where you feel like you have less to prove as you get older.
Mhm.
You still want to prove to yourself that you got a little bit left, but I don't feel such an urge to prove to everyone else how badass I am.
Mhm.
I feel like now it's more about proving to myself that I still got it, opposed
Mhm.
to when you're young, you're kind of doing it. It seems like you're doing it for what everyone else. Well, you're trying to get respect. Now it's like I don't care if people respect me, if
Mm,
that makes sense.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hmm. I'm curious what your walkout song is.
Oh, I've had a few. It kind of depends. A good like Eminem, like that Eminem with Trailer Park Girls go around the outside. That song is good if you're like the enemy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Without me. I think that song is called. You know what I mean? Kind of
Yeah.
depends. It depends too. You can like. I came out to like a dance song one, like and it was. I didn't like. It wasn't really me. But I've come out to a few rap songs like Eminem "Till I Collapse." That's a
Yeah.
good one too. And I actually funny day we heard it on the radio. "Enter Sandman" by Metallica. Because
Oh yeah. That would be a good one.
yeah, everyone likes him. Everyone liked old Metallica.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I think it depends where you are. Like it depends.
yeah,
Like if you're in Atlanta, you might want to come out to an Atlanta rapper. But if you're in Vancouver, you might want to come out to like, Tragically Hip. You know what I mean? It depends.
yeah,
And some people keep the same entrance song every entrance too, and some people switch it every one. I think I'm more of a switch it every one type. I actually cornered a guy in the UFC, Rory McDonald, when he fought in Vancouver, and he came out to Nas, one of Nas's, one of his classic songs. It's not coming to me right now, but it was good. It was a
yeah.
good one. Yeah, just about knowing who you are.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I can.
What would you come out to?
I don't know. It's funny. I like asked this question, but I've never thought about it for myself. Mostly because I'm like not obsessed with competing personally in
Yeah,
like.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, 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 yeah.
but
It's a big deal to certain guys. Like I come up with some fighters, and like, man, the time and effort they put into their come out song, their warm up songs and stuff.
yeah,
And then sometimes I had a few fights where they just pick it for you, where you don't,
yeah,
what I mean? I fought in Penticton and I came out to some punk song, and I don't think I've ever listened to a punk song in my whole entire life, but I didn't mind. Don't get me wrong,
yeah,
but you know what I mean. I would never put a punk song on. I don't mind punk. Don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't put a punk CD in.
yeah.
So it was kind of interesting.
I love Eminem. Though definitely, like I could see those being some of the high. Actually, the two songs you mentioned were two of my youngest son when I asked him.
Yeah.
But like 6 months ago, his warm up music, like if we were driving to class, was like soundtrack to Pirates of the Caribbean. Like
Okay.
anthem.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah,
like
yeah,
totally
yeah.
different.
Yeah, I'm at Tool too, like Tool music. I find, or like Perfect Circle. Those
Mhm.
songs too can be, because they're kind of weird and eerie. It kind of depends on the mood you're in too.
Yeah. Yeah, we choreographed we had like a little dance company a few years ago. We choreographed a 12-minute dance piece to Tool. Um, not Numa. What was oh no, yeah, Numa. Numa was the
Yeah,
one we were.
yeah, yeah,
And the coolest thing, like we did the show in that dance, I choreographed like a fight scene that actually had like a sequence.
cool.
Taught the dancers the like fighting sequence. It ended with like an armbar and then a choke, and like we were telling the story of Inanna, which is like a myth,
Yeah,
and she dies, and then like we bring her back to life. But a few weeks after the show, we were rolling, like it was jujitsu. It was either open mat or like end of the class when you're doing like 6-minute rounds or 10-minute rounds or 5-minute rounds, whatever it was. And I was rolling with a guy on our team, and that song was being played. Like our coach was playing it or whatever.
yeah,
And right at the same moment, like I started running the choreography in my head because it's so fresh,
yeah,
seeing the movements, but while I'm also.
yeah,
And then right at the same moment, I like got him in the same choke, and I was just like, like it
yeah,
was really neat
yeah,
watching how whatever is involved in that happening, whether it's like my brain being like, okay, and now, like,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
I always find when a good song comes on, like when I'm training somewhere and a wicked song comes on, and
yeah,
that's like I just get the biggest rush, and I'll tell the person I'm rolling with, "Oh, you're dead." And they'll be like, "Why?" And
yeah,
I'll be like, "I love this song. You're dead."
absolutely.
Yeah.
We're like, this is my jam, like
Yeah, yeah, it gets you fired up. It's crazy how music works, eh?
totally. Or where people will like sometimes a song will come on and then you're like waiting for the drop, like that.
Yeah.
It's super funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Well, is there anything else you would like to share for today? I will wrap up our
No,
call.
no, I just no, just thank you very much, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you for considering me and using me, and this was
Yeah,
cool.
it's
It
such
was,
an honor.
and it was nice to talk after the tournament too. You know what I mean? It was definitely, you know what I mean. Talk about it after is always good. You know what I mean? Self reflection, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to see some video footage from yesterday if that's out there.
Yeah, we definitely got some video footage. When I won the one match too, man, I was so stoked. I just screamed, "Fuck yeah!" It was like, and they got it all on video. It's a pretty classic moment.
Nice. Yeah, I would love to see that one, especially the guillotine. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I love that. Well, we'll wrap this up. I'll hit the end of the recording button, and then you and I
Sure.
can have a few minutes
Sure.
unrecorded. So,
Of course.
to anybody listening in, thank you for joining us. I have Clay Davidson here, and you can read in the write up a little more about him. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming, Clay.
Thank you.